Happy Hump Day, Jags fans, and welcome into Duval Daily, presented by GinJag.com. I'm Jordan DeLugo. Thank you so much for being here Wednesday, July 16th. First show of the day for y'all, and we are officially 50 days away from the start of the NFL season. So, very exciting. We've been talking about it. We're inching closer to training camp. Jaguars hit the field next Wednesday, if I'm doing my math correctly. And I will be out there officially. Got my acceptance email from the Jaguars to cover training camp again. I think it's been every year since 2019. Pretty awesome stuff. Very excited to be out there. Very excited to be able to provide coverage for y'all and try to have the most in-depth analysis and coverage that we can from a football standpoint. Again, within the rules and parameters of what the Jaguars and the NFL allow you to report on during training camp. I'm not allowed to report on a lot of the nitty-gritty individual things when it comes to formations and things of that nature. So just keep that in mind, right? But I will do my very best within the parameters that we are given. And right now, with a week left, I don't know if I'm going to do this with every team in the AFC South, but I definitely wanted to do it with the Texans. Are the Jaguars better than the Texans? I think that most pundits have the Texans at the top of the AFC South by themselves. I think a lot of people have the Jaguars in second. Some folks have the Colts in second. So maybe we'll do Jaguars and Colts as well. But I just kind of wanted to take a look at the Texans because right now the Texans are the class of the AFC South. And look at the Jaguars and the way they match up with the Texans, the way these two teams match up with kind of like average teams around the league. And then basically, who do I think is a better team? We've talked about it a little bit already this offseason, but this is going to be like a little bit more in-depth talk about the Jags and the Texans. So really appreciate y'all being here. If you enjoy the content, please like and subscribe. You can also check out GinJag.com/shop, pick up some new Duval gear. So when I look at the Jags and Texans and their matchups with each other, I think you'd be remiss if you didn't start with the defensive lines versus the offensive lines on both sides. Like you look at the Jaguars, specifically their edge group, but there's a lot of potential for improved play on the interior with the Jaguars as well. Eric Armstead kicking inside, Mason Smith going into year two, Devon Hamilton being further removed from his health scare. So there's potential on the interior, but really both teams, their edge groups versus the offensive tackle groups. Specifically looking at the Jaguars versus the Texans offensive tackles, Cam Robinson looks like he's going to be in the starting lineup in week one for the Houston Texans. What happened last time Josh Hines-Allen went up against Cam Robinson? Just ask Sam Darnold, right? He, I believe, racked up 11 pressures in that game. I will confirm that because that just sounds absurd, doesn't it? Cam Robinson could not touch Josh Hines-Allen last time they went up against each other. And but for a horrible offensive performance by the Jaguars against the Vikings. Okay, he had, what did he have? Okay, it says 6 on PFF. I think ESPN might have given him 11. But either way, Cam Robinson just could not touch Josh Hines-Allen in that game. It was crazy. And so and they know each other so well, right? They practice against each other for years. And Josh Hines-Allen routinely got the better of him. That's going to be popcorn. That's going to be fun to watch. And then you're also going to see Trayvon Walker as well against Cam. And then who's starting for the Texans at right tackle? I think it's going to be interesting to see how they play that out for sure. They have Blake Fisher going into year two. I think he's going to start. Titus Howard can also play right tackle. Trayvon Walker, Josh Hines-Allen versus these guys. And then also Will Anderson on the other side of things. Will Anderson and Daniil Hunter, Danico Autry. I believe they brought in Darryl Taylor versus Walker Little, Anton Harrison, if Anton Harrison is actually in the lineup, which he has to be. Anton Harrison has to be starting for the Jaguars, in my opinion. it would be absolutely insane to not have him starting. I get that they're trying to motivate him, trying to get the best out of him, but he's got to start. Bottom line. I really think that those edge matchups versus offensive tackle is going to be huge in these games, helping decide in these two divisional matchups against the Jags and the Texans what things kind of look like. But obviously, that's not the entire game. The interiors, I think that the Jaguars have a better chance of taking advantage of the Texans interior from a defensive line versus offensive line standpoint than the Texans have a chance of taking advantage of the Jaguars interior. I think the Jags interior offensive line with Patrick McCary, Ezra Cleveland / Wyatt Milam, and Robert Hainsey can handle business more often than not against a group that features Tim Settle, Foley Fatukasi, Mario Edwards, Sheldon Rankins. That's just how I see it, bottom line. So I think when you look at the other side, again, Eric Armstead getting back on the interior where he was actually productive when he aligned on the interior last year. Mason Smith was actually productive when he got on the field last year. And again, Devon Hamilton. I think that the Jaguars interior combined with their edge has a better chance of being more effective one-on-one and just winning defensive line versus offensive line than vice versa. But the Texans edge group is truly special. So going to be difficult for both offenses to deal with the defensive fronts. Difference overall with the defenses is D'Amico Ryans is a proven defensive coordinator. That doesn't mean he's better than Anthony Campanile, but it does mean he's more proven. You can bank on D'Amico Ryans and his defense being really good, being really sound, being really aggressive. And I think that the Jaguars safeties, and linebackers in coverage specifically presents some question marks for me against these Texans. Again, if you're winning your one-on-ones and making it difficult for CJ Stroud, it makes it a lot easier to cover. But it also makes it a lot easier to rush if you're doing a pretty good job in coverage. So players like Devin Lloyd, Eric Murray, who was a Texan last year, Caleb Branshaw, or Andrew Wingard, or Darnell Savage, whoever else is starting at safety. These are players that are going to have to be effective in coverage because the Texans, Tank Dell got injured, but they have Nico Collins, Christian Kirk, ever heard of him, Jalen Knoll, and Jaden Higgins. Also Dalton Schultz, who's, not scaring anybody, but he's a reliable player. Those guys got to be able to cover against the Texans, for sure. They've got depth and talent at receiver. I don't think you're trying to have any safety or linebacker in coverage against Nico Collins, but safeties and linebackers at times are going to have to deal with Christian Kirk, Jalen Knoll, probably Jaden Higgins at times. Heck, the way Nick Caley comes in here and runs his offense, you might have to. And the Jags are going to be in zone coverage a lot more than man. And when they are in man, I think they're going to do a good job with the matchups. So, but safeties and linebackers in coverage. That's one big question I have for the Jaguars. How do these teams match up against other teams? I think that the Jaguars offense is going to be very, very explosive. I think the Jaguars edge rushers are going to be difficult to deal with against anyone. Again, I think the Texans have a really good group overall. I think that their offensive line is below average. So that's really interesting, especially when you talk about, I think you're probably hoping to raise the floor with Nick Caley for sure and trying to raise the ceiling as well. Like the offensive line blocking assignment wise last year was atrocious in Houston. The problem is, while I think they might be coached better and just more cohesive and coherent, they are less talented than they were last year on the offensive line by a wide margin. The Houston Texans are. So even if Nick Caley does a really good job, I don't think that you are maximizing CJ Stroud with this offensive line group, because as good as CJ Stroud can be getting the ball out quick, his superpower is kind of being able to hang in there and get through his progressions and make big plays that way. So you want to be protecting him and giving him time. Are they going to be able to do that this year? I don't know. I really don't. I think the Texans defense is clearly ahead of the Jaguars defense on paper. But I think the Jaguars offense is more explosive than the Texans offense on paper. Look at the speed the Jaguars offense has in Travis Hunter, Brian Thomas Jr., Travis Etienne, Bashal Tutin, De'Ami Brown. These guys can absolutely fly. And the Texans aren't a slow offense, but compared to the Jaguars, they are not nearly as fast. And Trevor Lawrence, one of the best deep ball throwers in the game. Brian Thomas Jr., one of the best deep ball. I mean, he was the best receiver on post routes last year in the NFL. Right? So there's a lot to get excited about both teams. There's a lot of question marks. Really, for the Texans, it comes across the entire offensive line. For the Jaguars, I think it's more to do with some of the specific areas of the defense, kind of the spine of the defense. Even though I do love Foye Oluokun, I have a lot of hope for Devin Lloyd being a more consistent player in coverage. There's questions about the spine of the defense. But again, overall, I think the Jaguars will be a more explosive offense and team than the Texans. I don't think you're maximizing Stroud with a below-average offensive line. But with all that said, I think it's really close between these two teams. I would still give the slight advantage to the Texans because they have continuity on their side, on the defensive side of the ball. They have the established connection of C.J. Stroud and Nico Collins that has been very, very good for them. Trevor Lawrence and Brian Thomas Jr. still growing together, right? Travis Hunter, new. And obviously the Texans have a lot of new receivers as well. Tank Dell going to be injured for a while. Don't know if he's ever going to be back to what he was doing before that catastrophic knee injury. It's really close. I think the Texans, if the Texans would have just done a little bit more on the offensive line, I could be sitting here and saying they could be a team ready to take the next step. I don't know that I see that with this offensive line group. And the Jaguars, I think they're going to take a step forward. I think they're going to be competing for the playoffs. I think they're going to be competing for the division. I just give a slight advantage to the Texans. D'Amico Ryan's an established, really good head coach, even if we don't like him too much here in Jacksonville. Aziz Al-Shaair, the defense of that play was just ridiculous in my opinion. But it's close. It is really close. I think the AFC South is going to be incredibly tight and competitive this year. Could come down to injuries. Could come down to which one of these question marks for these teams actually ends up coming to be able to play ball most weeks. Let me know what y'all think in the comment section below. I have the Texans just ahead of the Jaguars right now. Again, let me know what y'all think. If you enjoy the content, please like and subscribe. Y'all have a good one.